The sky beyond Eden was vast, pale, and still. Where once Adam and Eve had walked beside the Creator himself in gardens of endless light and fruit-laden trees, now they stood on unfamiliar earth, dry, thorn, and cold. The gates of paradise, shut with a thunderous cry that echoed like divine mourning, were guarded by a burning sword, turning in all directions. Behind those gates was memory. Before them lay exile. The first humans stood at the edge of a world they did not yet understand, and silence pressed against them from all sides. They did not yet know hunger, but already felt the ache of absence. Absence of comfort, absence of closeness, absence of God. And still, they did not curse. They did not turn from the one who had made them. Instead, Adam dropped to his knees, his fingers digging into coarse soil, tears falling freely from his eyes. His voice trembled with regret and longing. "O Lord, do not forget me," he cried. "Though I have sinned, though I am unworthy, do not abandon us in this darkness." Eve knelt beside him, her face upturned, her voice soft yet resolute. "You breathed life into us. If you turn away now, we return to dust." Their grief was not rebellion. It was repentance. It was hope wrapped in sorrow. And in that hope, we begin. There is a book older than the Bible, forbidden by priests, hidden by kings, and said to have been written by the hand of an angel. A book that holds the secret names of heaven itself, given not to saints or sages, but to the first man ever born into exile. Tonight, we open it. Before we dive deeper, do this first. If you're intrigued already, pause for a moment. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss what comes next. Leave a comment right now, telling us where in the world you're watching from and what time it is there. We'd love to see how far this mystery reaches. And if this story grips you the way it has gripped us, share the video with someone you think needs to hear it, especially if you've already begun to understand the mystery behind the title. This is the Book of Raziel, the forbidden book of the angel that God sent to Adam after Eden, a book said to contain the 1,500 secrets of creation, the 72 holy names, and the language that commands the stars. It is older than any scroll. It was not penned, but given, and on the morning after the fall, it came not as punishment, but as a gift. Time passed, though Adam and Eve could not measure it. Days blurred. They learned how to pull roots from soil, how to build fire with trembling hands, how to survive in a world where nothing came easily, and still they prayed. Every dawn, Adam would turn to the east, toward the sealed gates of Eden, and cry out for mercy. At dusk, Eve would whisper her own quiet petitions to the wind, their voices carried into the silence. And though there was no reply, they did not stop. Until one morning, everything changed. The air that day was strange, soft, heavy with something neither had ever felt before. The wind carried a warmth that had no earthly source. Eve sat upright from her rest, eyes wide. "Do you feel that?" she asked. Adam nodded, his heartbeat quickening. From the east came a light, not the pale gold of the rising sun, but something richer, deeper alive. The light moved like a river across the sky, shimmering over the rocks and thorns, turning the dust to silver, and from its heart descended a figure. He did not walk, he did not glide. He descended as though gravity had forgotten him, as though light itself bore his weight. He was tall, radiant, clothed in robes that shimmered like starlight poured into fabric. His wings vast, silver-edged, filled the air with a sound like distant rain. His eyes held something more than vision. They held eternity. Adam and Eve fell face down, trembling. They could not bear the sight. They could not lift their heads. And then he spoke. "Do not be afraid," said the voice, deep and calm, resonating like waves against stone. "I am Raziel, keeper of God's secrets. Adam, your prayer has been heard." His words fell like rain on parched earth. They didn't just speak, they filled, healed, restored. Though you have fallen, you are not forgotten. Though the gates are closed, heaven is not. Slowly, hesitantly, Adam lifted his head. His eyes met the angels, and in them he saw neither wrath nor condemnation but mercy. Then the angel extended his hand, and in it was a book. It pulsed with light, its cover like a living sapphire, letters of fire dancing across its surface, rearranging themselves in patterns that Adam somehow understood, though he had never learned them. The air around the book shimmered, as though even the breeze dared not touch it. "This," said Raziel, "is the Sefer Raziel Hamalak, the Book of Raziel the angel. In it are written the mysteries of creation, the names of the angels, the gates of the heavens, and the language that shaped the stars. It is a gift not because you are worthy, but because God is merciful. Guard it, teach it. Let it be a light for your children in the ages to come." Adam reached for the book. The moment his fingers touched it, warmth surged through his body, not the warmth of sun or fire, but the warmth of being seen, being known, being loved. He gasped as if life had entered him anew. Raziel's voice, steady and powerful, sealed the moment. "You will not walk alone," he said. "Heaven watches still." And with that, the angel rose again, the light enveloping him until it was gone, leaving only the echo of his presence and the faint scent of the garden they had lost. Silence returned, but it was a different silence now. Not empty, but full of possibility, of hope, of promise. Adam held the book close to his chest. Eve knelt beside him, eyes wide. "What does it say?" she whispered. "Everything," Adam replied, his voice barely audible. "It says everything. Well, do exam." They sat there for hours, neither speaking. The book glowed softly between them, its light casting long shadows that danced across the rocks. It was as though the night itself had retreated, unable to abide in the presence of such holy fire. Eve finally placed her hand over Adam's. "Then we must guard it," she said. "We must never let it be lost. Meda Sidis, be muksind." And Adam nodded. "No," he whispered. "Never again will we be truly alone. Willi tus and lestig not him." This was not a return to Eden, but it was the beginning of a new path, a path back toward the presence of God. A path paved not with perfection, but with humility, prayer, and divine mercy. It began that morning, with tears in their eyes and a book in their hands. And the world, though still hard, was no longer hopeless. Adam and Eve did not sleep that night. They sat beside each other under the vast sky, the book glowing gently between them like a hearth in the wilderness. The stars above, once symbols of cold distance, now felt like watchers, like witnesses to something ancient unfolding once more. Adam held the book with care, almost reverence, as if it might dissolve into light if he clutched too tightly. He traced the shimmering cover with his fingers, the patterns of fire dancing beneath his touch. Each time the letters shifted, it was as though they responded not just to his hand, but to his spirit. He looked at Eve, and she nodded. Together, they opened the book. The pages were unlike anything they had ever seen. They were not made of animal hide or leaf or stone. They seemed to be woven from light itself, thin, translucent, yet impossible to tear. Each page radiated warmth, But it was not heat that burned. It was warmth that healed. Symbols covered the first page in a script that Adam did not know, yet somehow understood. He did not read with his eyes. He read with his soul. The first words blazed in letters of gold. In the beginning, before light and darkness were divided, the Most High spoke, and all things came to be. And as Adam read them, something stirred within him, a memory deeper than memory. He remembered the breath that filled his lungs when he first awakened. He remembered the voice that had called him into being. He remembered joy, the garden, the presence. Tears welled in his eyes. The book was not just a record. It was a bridge back to God. He turned the page. The letters realigned, forming a new sentence. This is the Sefer Raziel Hamalak, the Book of Raziel the angel. It contains the 1,500 keys to creation, the names of 72 holy angels, and the mysteries of heaven and earth. Eve leaned closer, her breath catching as the light of the page reflected in her eyes. "What does it mean?" she asked softly. Adam's voice trembled. "It means we are not forsaken. It means we have been given a way to understand." Of Stoding, each page unfolded new wonders. There were diagrams of the heavens, concentric circles representing the 7 realms of glory. Stars were positioned like living beings, each with a path and purpose. The constellations were not just patterns in the sky, they were words in a language older than speech. Messages written in fire to be read by those who remembered how. As Adam read, he understood. The universe was not chaos. It was music. It was harmony, precise and purposeful. And at its center stood the hand of the Creator. They came upon lists, names written in vertical columns, each burning with soft blue light. These were the angels: Michael, the defender; Gabriel, the messenger; Uriel, the flame of wisdom; Raphael, the healer. Eve recognized the names, though she could not say how. It was as if they were already imprinted upon her soul. The book described their tasks, their stations in heaven, and how each was connected to the turning of seasons, the rise of tides, and even the beating of the human heart. There are angels, Adam read, who govern wind and rain, angels who record every word ever spoken, angels who protect travelers and bless the birth of children. None are idle, all serve the Most High. It is not. Eve wept as she listened, not from fear, but from awe. She had seen angels once, in Eden, radiant and distant. Now, for the first time, she felt them near present, watching, guiding. "We are not alone," she whispered. Adam nodded. "No, even here, beyond the gates, heaven still sees us." "Whither do then, dozen milm?" He turned another page. A breath caught in his throat. Written in letters of fire were the 72 names of God. They were not names in the sense of titles or labels. They were keys, each one opening a different aspect of divine presence. Some brought healing, others clarity. Some brought strength, others peace. And each name was living. The letters moved as he watched them, shifting in rhythm with his heartbeat. Adam did not dare speak them aloud. He felt the power in them, as one might feel the current in a storm-swollen river. To speak such a name with ignorance or arrogance would be like trying to hold lightning in one's hand. "This is more holy than anything we touched in Eden," Adam whispered. He felt the truth in his bones. The garden had been beauty, innocence, nearness. But this book, this was knowledge, given not to restore pride, but to nurture humility. It was not meant to lift man above creation, but to show him how to walk rightly within it. Eve placed her hand over his. "Then we must guard it." she said. We must teach it to our children, and they to theirs. We must never forget. Massened, Adam closed the book gently, holding it to his chest. It warmed him, not as fire warms flesh, but as light warms the soul. For the first time since the gates closed behind them, Adam did not feel lost. He felt chosen not because he was great, but because God was still reaching out. That night, they spoke of what the book might contain. Eve wondered if it would tell them how to farm, how to heal, how to build homes for their children. Adam believed it would. It will teach us how to live again, he said, not as rulers, but as stewards of what we were given. As keepers of a promise we must not let die. Ifru. They sat beneath the stars in silence. But the silence was no longer empty. It hummed with meaning, with presence, with promise. Somewhere far above, angels moved through the heavens, watching the earth below. And in Adam's hands, the book pulsed softly alive, patient, waiting to be read. It was not a book of power. It was a book of remembrance, a book of return. Eve leaned against Adam, her voice barely above a whisper. Why would he give this to us? After everything? Adam didn't answer right away. He looked at the sky, then at the book. Finally, he said, because he has not finished writing our story, because even now, he still loves us. Minna. In the days that followed, Adam rose with the first light of dawn, always with the book in his hands. His feet traced the same path through the wilderness each morning, past dry stones and thorny shrubs, until he found a quiet place where he could sit undisturbed. There, beneath the canopy of an awakening sky, he would open the Book of Raziel and read. He read slowly, reverently, as if afraid the pages might vanish if he turned them too quickly. The words did not speak to the mind as much as they spoke to the spirit. Eve often joined him, sitting silently at his side, absorbing every breath, every whisper. One morning, Adam came to a section of the book that seemed to shine brighter than the rest. He turned the page, and before him unfolded a map not of earth, but of heaven. 7 concentric realms, layered like crystal spheres, each more radiant than the one below it. The words written there called it the structure of the heavens. Adam's breath caught in his throat. He had glimpsed the heavens once, through the garden's open sky. But this was a revelation of what lay beyond what mortal eyes could see. There are 7 heavens, he read aloud, his voice trembling with wonder. 7 realms above the earth, each home to a host of angels, each formed with a purpose known only to the Creator. He touched the page, and as he did, the names of the heavens illuminated one by one. Shamayim, Rakia, Shehakim, Zebul, Maon, Machon, and Araboth. Each name seemed to echo in the air, as if the very sky above him were listening. Shamayim, the first heaven, stretched above the earth like a veil of water and light. It was the realm of the clouds, the winds, the stars visible to man. Here resided angels who governed the weather, the messengers who guided the rain to fall, the snow to drift, the thunder to roll. They were described as mist-like beings, always moving, always shifting, their forms never fixed. They shaped the seasons, the tides, the winds that whispered through the trees. Adam looked upward, eyes wide. Every breeze he had ever felt, every storm that had broken across the sky, was the work of these silent watchmen. Rakia, the second heaven, was the firmament where stars were fixed and constellations carved their eternal dance. Adam traced the diagram of stars etched into the page. It was not chaos. It was order. design, purpose. The angels who lived here were the watchers, not the fallen ones of later stories, but faithful ones. They recorded the deeds of every living soul, keeping scrolls of kindness and cruelty, of love and betrayal. Each word, each act, every hidden thought was seen and written. Nothing, Adam whispered, goes unnoticed. Randi post to the third heaven, Shihakim, was the place of abundance. From here came the manna that would one day feed Israel in the wilderness. But it was more than bread. It was nourishment of spirit. Trees grew here whose fruit never rotted, whose leaves shimmered with dew that healed. Angels, described as gentle and joyful, tended these orchards, preparing food not just for bodies, but for souls. Eve placed her hand on Adam's shoulder. A heaven that feeds the heart, she said. A mercy even in exile. Today, Zebul, the fourth heaven, held the heavenly Jerusalem, a city of eternal light. It mirrored the Jerusalem that would later be built by Solomon. But this city had never known war or bloodshed. At its center stood a temple not made by hands, but by light and song. There, the archangel Michael offered prayers from earth before the throne of God. Even our cries, Adam murmured, are carried to him. It was this heaven, the book said, where prayers gathered pure, sincere, burning with hope, and ascended to the altar like incense. Maon, the fifth heaven, resounded with eternal music. It was the dwelling of angels who sang without ceasing, whose voices echoed with the joy of being near the Creator. The book described the sound as both thunderous and tender songs that were color and scent and feeling. Impossible to describe, but impossible to forget. Here, the text read, sorrow is silenced. Here, only joy is allowed to speak. Adam closed his eyes, trying to imagine such sound. Eve smiled. Perhaps when we sleep, she said, we hear its echo in our dreams. Mos, Machon, the sixth heaven, was the treasury. Vast halls of light held blessings yet to be given, answers to prayers not yet spoken, healings not yet needed, strength for trials not yet endured. The angels here were stewards, holding back the floodgates until the precise moment God decreed them to open. Adam's voice quivered as he read, each act of kindness opens a gate. Each act of faith draws down light. They sat in silence, awed by the thought that their small efforts on earth might stir heaven's vaults. Then came Araboth the seventh, the highest heaven, the throne of God. The book did not attempt to describe it in full. No tongue may speak, it read. No mind may grasp, no soul may stand unless invited. There dwelled the seraphim and cherubim, highest of the angelic host, their wings veiling their faces, crying day and night, whole, whole, holy is the Lord, light beyond light, fire without shadow, a presence that was being itself. Adam's eyes filled with tears as he whispered, this is where I was made. This is the voice I remember. Eve bowed her head. Then perhaps, she said, our return is not to Eden, but to him, everyone. They closed the book and sat beneath the sky. The stars blinked quietly above them. Adam understood now that he had never truly looked at them before. Each one a witness, each one a word. The heavens were not distant. They were near, layer upon layer, each closer than breath. And in the silence, he felt it, a presence, a watching, a waiting. The book had revealed not only the shape of the heavens, but the promise that they were not abandoned. They were still part of the story, still part of the divine design. From that day forward, Adam began to teach what he had learned to Eve, and together they would pass it on, for knowledge is not meant to be hoarded, but shared, not to build pride, but to preserve hope. The structure of the heavens was not simply a map, it was a ladder, and though the garden gates were closed, the way upward had never been barred. As the days unfolded into weeks, Adam and Eve returned again and again to the Book of Raziel, never ceasing to marvel at its depth. The book did not reveal all at once. Rather, it opened slowly, like a flower blooming in the light of dawn. One morning, as Adam turned a new page, a flood of radiance illuminated the surface. There, arranged in columns of fire-brushed script, were names, rows upon rows of angelic names, each alive with meaning. Adam ran his fingers just above the surface, careful not to touch it. "These," he whispered, "are the messengers of God." End quote. Each name had a purpose. Each angel had a task appointed from the beginning of time. The book did not describe angels as abstract forces or symbolic ideas, but as living beings of flame and light, loyal servants of the Most High. There were names Adam recognized from memories of the garden: Michael, whose presence was like the clash of thunder; Gabriel, who had once whispered to him at dusk; Uriel, the flame-eyed sentinel; Raphael, the comforter who walked unseen among the wounded. And there were others, countless others, whose names had never been spoken on earth. The book described not only who they were, but what they did. Some governed the movement of stars, ensuring the heavens remained in rhythm. Others controlled the waters of the earth, the rivers, the rain, the sea. Still more watched over animals, guiding migrations, protecting nests, blessing the birth of calves and birds alike. There were angels who tended the growth of each blade of grass, who whispered through the wind, who carried human prayers up through the layers of heaven. It was not chaos, it was divine order, a cosmos pulsing with harmony, built not on dominance, but on responsibility. Eve studied the names with wide eyes. "There are so many," she said. "I thought there were just a few." Adam nodded slowly. "We knew only the few we saw in Eden, but they were only the beginning." The pages shimmered as they turned, revealing ranks of angels, the seraphim, beings of pure fire, surrounding the throne; the cherubim, guardians of divine mysteries; the thrones, silent in their majesty; the dominions, wise and watchful; the virtues, carrying healing across the earth; the powers, warriors against darkness; the principalities, who guided nations; and the archangels, who carried the voice of God to man. Yet beyond these great orders were countless others, angels unnamed in human language, each one created for a purpose. There are angels, the book read, who guard the footsteps of those who walk in sorrow; angels who cradle the souls of the dying; angels who stir the heart with longing for what is holy; and angels who write each moment of compassion into the eternal book of remembrance. It's read. As they read, Adam began to feel something stir deep within him, a reverence unlike anything he had known before. These were not just servants of God, they were reminders that humanity was not forgotten, that even in exile, they were watched, guided, protected. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "You are near." It's see. One passage spoke of angels who walked the earth in disguise, appearing as strangers at the edge of villages, as travelers by the fire, as voices in dreams. Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, the book warned, for some have welcomed angels unaware. Eve clutched Adam's hand. "Do you think we've met one without knowing?" Adam thought back to moments, a kind look from a passing animal, a stillness in the air before an answer came in prayer. "Perhaps we meet them every day," he said. "Perhaps we simply forget how to see." Is Lossig. They turned another page, and here the book gave instructions, not spells, but prayers, not commands, but calls. There were sacred phrases written in holy script, ways to invoke the presence of certain angels in times of need. The language was precise, the tone reverent. "Call only when your heart is pure," it warned. "Do not summon for pride, for power, for vengeance. Call in humility, in sorrow, in sincere need, and they will answer not as slaves, but as messengers sent by mercy." Leaders, Gogoza. Adam understood this deeply. The book was not a manual of control. It was a covenant of relationship. These beings were not to be manipulated. They were to be honored, respected, revered. He closed his eyes and spoke the name of Haniel, grace of God, and felt a warmth pass through him like the touch of sunlight. He did not see an angel descend, but he did feel peace. That, he realized, was enough. Eve's favorite name was Chamuel, he who sees God. The book described him as the guide of the lost, the one who brings those in darkness back to the path of light. "That is who I want to walk beside," she said. "One who finds." Adam smiled. "Then perhaps he already walks beside you." Together they memorized the names, repeating them each morning with reverence. They taught them to their children, singing them into lullabies, writing them into the rhythm of daily work. Each name was a blessing, each one a thread in the tapestry of divine love woven into the fabric of the world. Over time, Adam began to notice things he had never seen before. The wind shifted more gently when they prayed. The animals came closer when he sang the angelic names. Stars seemed to move in rhythm with his words. It was as if the world itself responded to the recognition of these divine beings, as if all of creation was waiting for man to remember. And slowly, Adam came to understand. The angels had not been hidden. They had simply been ignored. In the evenings, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Adam and Eve would sit with the book between them and speak the names aloud, not to summon, but to remember that even in exile, they were not alone. Even in brokenness, they were beloved. Even in silence, they were heard. The names were not magic. They were memory of who they were, of who God is, and of the invisible army that still walked beside them. The book taught them that divine order was not about domination, but about harmony. Angels did not rule. They served. They did not demand worship. They facilitated it. They did not replace God. They revealed him. And, in that understanding, Adam found peace. In time, Adam reached the most fearsome and radiant portion of the Book of Raziel. Even before he read a single word, he sensed the weight of it. The air around the pages felt heavier, charged, as though creation itself leaned closer. Eve noticed it too. She said nothing, but her hand tightened around his wrist as he turned the page. What appeared before them was unlike anything else in the book. No diagrams of stars, no ranks of angels, only names, 72 of them, each formed of 3 letters, each burning with a quiet intensity that made the eyes ache if stared at too long. "These," Adam whispered, his voice barely sound, "are the names of the Most High." It screamed. They were not names in the way man names things. They were not titles, not labels, not sounds meant for casual speech. The book made this clear at once. These were forces, currents of divine will woven into language. Each name represented a different aspect of God's infinite nature. A different way, his presence moved through the world. Healing, protection, wisdom, justice, mercy, order, renewal. The words did not merely describe these things, they carried them. As Adam gazed upon the names, images flooded his mind. He saw light separating from darkness. He saw the waters parting. He saw the stars being placed like lamps in the sky. He felt the breath of God moving across the void. The names were not written after creation. They were creation, fragments of the language God spoke when the universe came into being. Eve felt her knees weaken and sat beside him. "They are alive," she said softly. Adam nodded. "Yes, and they are not meant for careless tongues." The book itself seemed to warn them. The script shifted, forming a passage beneath the names. "These names are fire. In the hands of the humble, they warm and heal. In the hands of the proud, they consume." Adam swallowed. He understood instinctively that to misuse these names would not merely fail, it would destroy. The book explained how the 72 names were hidden within sacred scripture itself, woven into verses so subtly that only those taught by heaven would ever notice. 3 verses, each containing 72 letters, arranged forward, backward, and forward again, forming a lattice of divine speech. It was a puzzle, but not one meant to be solved for amusement. It was a gate, meant to be approached on one's knees. Adam did not speak the names aloud. He did not dare. Instead, he studied them in silence, committing them to memory, letting them settle into his heart rather than his mouth. He felt each one resonate differently within him. One name brought a sense of calm so deep it quieted his thoughts entirely. Another stirred courage, straightening his back and filling his chest with strength. Another brought sorrow, a reminder of loss and the cost of disobedience. Together, they formed a complete picture of God not as a single attribute, but as an infinite being whose mercy and justice, power and tenderness, existed in perfect balance. Eve asked the question that weighed on both of them. Why would he trust us with this? Adam closed the book gently before answering. Because knowledge alone is not power, he said. Intention is. The book did not give the names so man could command God. It gave them so man could align himself with God. To speak a name was not to demand. It was to invite, to open oneself completely and say, "Let your will move here." Id statue, we'd have friendo. In the days that followed, Adam experimented carefully, cautiously. When Eve fell ill from exhaustion, he meditated on one of the names associated with restoration. He did not speak it. He simply held it in his mind and prayed. By morning, her strength returned. When fear crept into his heart at night, he focused on a name tied to peace, and his racing thoughts settled like dust after a storm. Each time, the effect was gentle, never dramatic, never showy. The book made this clear as well. True divine power did not announce itself. It moved quietly, reshaping reality from within. The book also warned of boundaries. Some names were not to be approached without preparation. They were tied to judgment, to cosmic balance, to forces beyond the endurance of the human soul. These, the text said, belong to the throne, not to the dust. Adam felt no resentment at this, only gratitude. Limits, he realized, were mercy. As they studied, Adam began to understand something deeper. The 72 names were not merely tools for moments of need. They were mirrors. Each one revealed something about the human soul as well. One name reflected compassion, another discipline, another humility. To meditate on a name was to be asked a question. Are you aligned with this? Are you ready to carry what this name represents? If not, the name would remain silent. Eve reflected on this often. Perhaps she said one evening. "The names do not change the world first. Perhaps they change us." Adam smiled. "And perhaps that is how the world is changed." The book seemed to affirm this thought, revealing a passage that spoke of transformation not as sudden miracles, but as steady refinement. The name spoken with love repairs the soul. The soul repaired reshapes the world. Mentors. They taught this understanding to their children, not the names themselves, but the reverence required to approach them. They taught humility before knowledge, patience before power, obedience before curiosity. The names were not secrets to be hoarded. They were responsibilities to be earned. As time passed, Adam felt a renewed closeness to God, not as it had been in Eden, face to face, but as something quieter and perhaps deeper. God was no longer simply present around him. God was present within him, in thought, in intention, in restraint. The names had taught him that God's greatest power was not creation, but relationship. One night, Adam dreamed of a river of fire flowing from heaven to earth. Along its banks stood angels, guiding its course. The fire did not burn the land. It restored it. Flowers bloomed where it touched. Broken ground healed. When Adam awoke, he knew what the dream meant. The 72 names were that river, dangerous only when misdirected, life-giving when allowed to flow as intended. He rose quietly, careful not to wake Eve, and stepped outside beneath the stars. He looked up and whispered a prayer without words, holding one name in his heart, not for himself, not for power, but in gratitude. And in that moment, he felt it again, the assurance he had felt when Raziel first descended. Heaven was still open, not to pride, but to humility, not to force, but to faith. The names glowed faintly in his memory, not demanding to be spoken, but waiting for the right moment, waiting for the right heart, waiting for a future generation that would need them as desperately as he once had. Not all eyes in the heavens looked upon Adam with compassion. While many angels rejoiced that God had shown mercy to man, others watched with silent resentment. These were not fallen angels yet. They had never defied the Creator, never stepped outside their stations, never tasted rebellion. But they had questions, and those questions, unspoken but smoldering, stirred beneath their wings. Why had the Lord given such a sacred treasure to a creature of dust? Why bestow divine secrets upon the one who had broken the single commandment he was given? Among the host of heaven, some whispered in shadows, "He failed in the garden." One said, "And now he walks with our knowledge," said another. They did not speak their doubt aloud in the courts of the Most High, for even in their envy, they feared his gaze. But envy, like a seed buried in silence, began to grow. These angels had stood since before time began. They had sung at the forging of the stars, shaped the winds, held the balance of creation for ages beyond memory. Yet they had not been given the book. It had been given to the one cast out, one angel, unnamed in the pages of Raziel's book, voiced the thought none dared speak. "Let him prove he is worthy," he said. "Let him be tested. Let us see if he can guard what was entrusted to him." The others, still bound to order, did not resist. And so, without rebellion, without open defiance, a quiet act was planned, not to harm Adam, but to test him, a trial silent, swift, and shrouded in the night. That evening, as Adam and Eve slept beneath the stars, the Book of Raziel resting between them, a shadow passed over the land. A host of angels descended, their wings cloaked in silence, their forms shifting like smoke in moonlight. They did not shine, they did not speak. One moved forward, His fingers hovered over the book. Trembling, it pulsed with living light. This was not meant for him, the angel whispered, and then he took it. The moment his hand touched the cover, a searing light flashed across the ground. The book flared with fire, and a wave of heat passed through the night. The angel winced, but did not let go. He held it as one holds something burning, determined and ashamed. "Quickly," he said. The others gathered around him. Together, they lifted into the sky. The book clutched tightly in the angel's arms, and they flew toward the edge of the world. Below, Adam stirred. His hand reached toward Eve in sleep. The stars watched silently. The angels flew until they reached the sea, dark, endless. Still, the surface reflected the moon, calm and untouched. One of the angels hesitated. "Are we sure?" But the leader gave no answer. With a final glance toward the sleeping world behind them, he cast the book downward. The Book of Raziel tumbled through the sky, its light flickering, its pages rustling like wings. It struck the surface with a sound that only the stars heard. Then it sank, down into the depth, swallowed by the silence of the deep. The angels turned and rose, their task complete, their hearts unquiet. They returned to heaven, but they had not gone unnoticed. In the highest heaven, Araboth, the throne room of the Most High, nothing is hidden. God had seen before it began. He had known the jealousy, known the plan, and already prepared the response. No anger flashed from the throne. No punishment fell upon the angels. Instead, a command was given. The Lord called upon Rahab, the angel who governs the depths, the keeper of the sea and its secrets. His wings shimmered like ocean foam. His voice echoed like the breaking of waves. "Go," the Lord said, "retrieve what was cast away. For what I give, no one may take, not even my own." Rahab bowed. "It will be done," and free. While Adam and Eve still slept, Rahab descended. The waters parted before him. Dark creatures fled from his path. The sea itself opened to receive him. He dove into the deep, down through layers of silence, down where no light had ever touched. At the bottom of the sea, half buried in sand, lay the Book of Raziel, still glowing faintly, like an ember waiting for breath. Rahab lifted it with reverent hands. "You were stolen by envy," he said softly, "but you will be returned by love." He rose through the water, swift as a wave cresting in storm, and flew back toward the land. The sea closed behind him without a sound. At dawn, Adam awoke. The light of morning had begun to spread across the sky. He reached instinctively for the book. His hand touched only dirt. He froze. Panic gripped him. "Eve," he said, shaking her awake. "The book. It's gone." And, quote, she sat up, eyes wide. Together, they searched under stones, beneath brush, across the camp. There was no trace. Adam dropped to his knees, his face in the dirt. "Lord," he cried, "have I failed you again? Did I not guard it? Did I not cherish what you gave?" His voice cracked. "If I am unworthy, take even my breath, but do not leave us in silence again. If it does." Then, from the east, a light appeared, not as fierce as Raziel's, but deep, like the sea at dawn. Adam shielded his eyes. A figure approached, tall and calm, holding something in both hands. It was Rahab, his presence like the hush before the tide. "Do not fear," he said. "The book was taken, but not by your fault. Some in heaven doubted your worth, but the Lord does not take back what he has freely given." Very people, He placed the book in Adam's arms. The moment it touched him, Adam felt whole again. Not powerful, not vindicated, just whole. He wept, not in shame, but in gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. Rahab smiled. "Thank the one who sent me. I am only a servant." And with that, the angel lifted into the morning light and vanished. Eve knelt beside Adam, her eyes shining. "He gave it back," she said. "He gave it back to us." Adam nodded slowly, unable to speak. He looked down at the book, now resting once more in his hands. Its light pulsed softly, steadily, not as bright as before, but warmer, gentler, a light not of power, but of promise. In that moment, Adam understood something he had not before. The book was not merely knowledge, it was covenant. It was not only a gift, it was a vow that no matter how far mankind wandered, the Creator would not abandon them, that even when angels turned away, God would not. The loss and return of the Book of Raziel was no accident. It was a revelation that heaven's love for man was not based on merit, but on mercy, and that mercy, once given, would not be taken back. The years passed. The garden remained lost behind its flaming sword, but Adam and Eve no longer looked back with despair. Instead, they turned their hearts forward toward building a new life, toward raising their children, toward preserving the precious wisdom they had been entrusted with. And above all, they protected the Book of Raziel. It was wrapped in woven cloth, kept hidden when not in use, and placed each evening at the center of their home like a sacred hearth. It was never treated as an object of pride. It was approached with reverence, for it carried not just divine knowledge, but divine mercy. Their first sons, Cain and Abel, came into the world with innocence, but the tragedy that unfolded between them reminded Adam that even knowledge could not shield man from the storm within the human heart. The pain of Abel's death and Cain's exile marked their family forever. But from the ashes of sorrow, hope returned. Another son was born. His name was Seth. From the beginning, Seth was different. He did not hunger for power or dwell in bitterness. He moved slowly, thoughtfully, as if the world whispered secrets to him in silence. Adam saw in his eyes a reflection of something that had once lived in his own, a longing for God, a hunger for the light that had walked with them in Eden. Eve called him her comfort, and Adam believed he was more than that. He was a continuation of the promise. When Seth came of age, Adam brought him to a quiet hilltop where the sky stretched endlessly, and the stars burned like embers from heaven's forge. He carried with him the Book of Raziel. He placed it between them, and for a long time, he said nothing. The wind moved through the grass. The earth was still. At last, Adam spoke. "My son," he said, "what I will give you tonight is not a treasure of this world. It is not gold. It is not power. It is not something that can be taken by force or measured by the eyes of men. It is a trust passed from heaven to me, and from me now to you." Before, Seth's eyes never left the book. "Is this the book the angel brought?" Adam nodded. "The very same. Raziel gave it to me when I wept for the voice of God. And in this book is written the voice I thought I had lost forever. It has taught me how to pray, how to see the heavens rightly, how to live not only by bread but by hope." He opened the book, revealing the names of angels, the 7 heavens, the 72 names of God. "But more than all of that, it has taught me that the Lord's mercy has no end, that even when we are cast out, He does not cast us away." Okay, they sat together, father and son, under the open sky, and Adam began to teach. Night after night, Adam instructed Seth in the words of the book. He did not rush, he did not overwhelm, for the knowledge was vast, and its power rested not in speed but in depth. Seth learned the names of the angels, not merely how to pronounce them, but what they represented. He learned how each angel reflected a part of the Creator's will, how their tasks were expressions of divine love and justice. He memorized the structures of the heavens, the meanings of the constellations, the sacred calendar that guided the seasons, and slowly he began to understand. Seth never spoke of the book to others. He never claimed it. He never boasted of what he knew. He lived quietly, as a shepherd of wisdom. In the shadows of Cain's legacy, Seth began a new lineage, not just of blood, but of spirit, a lineage that sought not dominion over the earth, but harmony with the heavens. When Adam grew old, his strength waning like a fading fire, he called Seth again to his side. The book lay between them, its cover as radiant as ever, untouched by time. "You must carry it now," Adam said, "not only in your hands, but in your soul. Teach it to your children and their children. Let it never be forgotten, for as long as this book remains, mankind will never be wholly lost." "Right," Seth bowed his head. "I will guard it, Father, and I will teach it as you taught me." Now, the book passed from Adam to Seth, from Seth to Enoch, from Enoch to Kenan, and down through the generations. Each guardian treated the book not as property, but as a living trust. Each one read its words in silence. Each one added nothing, subtracted nothing, but sought only to understand. Through famine and flood, through birth and death, the book endured. It did not belong to one man. It belonged to a covenant. But it was in the time of Jared, Seth's great-grandson, that something extraordinary would occur. Jared had a son. His name was Enoch. From the moment Enoch could walk, he would wander into the hills alone. He loved stillness, the quiet whisper of wind in grass, the rustle of trees at twilight. While other children wrestled and hunted, Enoch listened. He watched the stars. He felt drawn to something he could not name. Jared noticed, and when the time came, he brought Enoch to the same hill where Adam had once sat with Seth. Jared held the book in both hands, old and trembling. "This," he said, "is your inheritance, not for your blood, but for your spirit. Guard it, study it, and walk always in its light." End quote. Enoch took the book with reverent hands, and something passed between them, an unspoken understanding that this boy was not like others, that he was marked for something the world had not yet seen. Enoch opened the book, and the wind stirred, as if heaven itself had taken notice. Enoch was unlike any man who came before him. From the moment he first opened the Book of Raziel, he seemed to change not in form, but in presence. His eyes took on a stillness that made others pause. His voice, when he spoke, carried a calm that softened quarrels, calmed storms of emotion, and drew silence from even the most restless hearts. He did not seek to lead. He sought only to learn, and learn he did not with arrogance, but with awe. The book, alive in his hands, seemed to respond more quickly than it had for others, as though it had been waiting for him. He studied during the early morning hours while dew still clung to the grass. At noon, he walked alone among the hills, reciting angelic names in whispered breath. At night, under starlight, he meditated upon the mysteries of the seven heavens, seeing patterns others could not. The names of the 72 aspects of God became songs in his soul, and the prayers in the book shaped the rhythm of his days. He fasted often, not to punish his body, but to awaken his spirit. And in time, something within him began to shift. He no longer merely read the book, he saw through it. While others saw letters and diagrams, Enoch saw relationships, flows of divine energy, sacred architecture shaping all of existence. He understood how the movement of stars corresponded to spiritual cycles on earth, how every tree, every river, every moment in time echoed a truth written in the pages of the book. Where others saw scripture, Enoch saw a map leading not only upward, but inward. One night, when he was 65 years old, Enoch climbed a high ridge with the Book of Raziel pressed against his chest. The stars above him shimmered brighter than ever before. The world below was still. As he opened the book, a warmth rose from its pages, surrounding him like breath. The air became thick with a presence he could not name. Then a voice, gentle, immense, unmistakable, spoke his name. Enoch rose. He fell to his knees, trembling. Yes, Lord, Mess, you have studied what was given. You have guarded what was entrusted. Now I will show you what lies beyond the page. Rise and come. Mose. Before Enoch could respond, he felt his body grow light, as if his bones had turned to wind. The earth fell away beneath him. The sky opened. He rose not in dream, but in spirit and flesh. He was being drawn upward, through clouds, through light, through realms unseen by mortal eyes. The stars gave way to brightness beyond brightness. And then he entered the first heaven, Shemayim, the lowest heaven, stretched vast and luminous. He saw the storehouses of snow and hail, watched as angels released the winds to the earth below. Their forms moved like rivers of light, their faces joyful in obedience. They guided the rains and calmed the storms with song. Enoch wept. These were not myths. These were ministers. He rose again. In Rakia, the second heaven, he entered vast chambers of scrolls and celestial books. Angels moved among them, recording every thought, every deed, every whisper of mankind. One angel looked at Enoch and nodded solemnly. All things are seen, he said. All are measured. Enoch felt no fear, only awe. There was no cruelty here, only truth. He ascended to Shehakim, the third heaven, and stood beneath trees that bore fruit, shining like stars. Rivers of living water flowed between them, sweet and clear. Here, the souls of the righteous rested, singing songs of joy. They welcomed Enoch, not with words, but with light. Blessed is he, one soul said, who walks with the knowledge of God. Enoch bowed his head. Then came Zebul, the fourth heaven. The heavenly Jerusalem blazed with brilliance no earthly city could match. A temple of fire stood at its center, its altar glowing with eternal flame. Michael, the great archangel, stood before it, offering the prayers of mankind. Even the quietest prayer, he told Enoch, is heard here. Enoch fell to his knees, overcome. In Maun, the fifth heaven, Enoch heard what no man had heard before, the eternal song. Angels circled endlessly, singing praises to the Creator. Their voices were color and movement and scent. There was no beginning, no end, only the song. It wrapped around him, filled him, lifted him higher. In Machun, the sixth heaven, he beheld storehouses of blessing, vaults filled with light, healing, strength, wisdom, and mercy. Angels stood guard, waiting for the command to send these gifts into the world. Every act of love, one angel said, opens one of these doors. Enoch reached out and felt the warmth of hope in his hands. And finally, he reached Araboth, the seventh heaven, the throne room of the Most High. Here, no word could suffice. The throne itself blazed with fire and light beyond the sun. Around it flew the seraphim, their faces veiled, crying out, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty." The light seared through Enoch's soul. He fell on his face, unable to move, but then a hand lifted him. "Do not be afraid," the voice said. "You have walked with me on earth. Now you will walk with me in heaven." And Enoch knew he would not die. He would not return to dust. He would be taken, as Elijah would be taken in another age, as promised in the book. For those who walked in righteousness, the gate of heaven would remain open. Time passed. On earth, Enoch's family watched in wonder. He was gone for what seemed like days, and then he returned. His face shone with light no fire could give. He gathered his children and began to teach. He spoke of the heavens, of the angels, of the mercy of God that reached down even to the dust. He held the Book of Raziel close, not as an artifact, but as a guide, a key to the eternal. When he had said all that needed to be said, he gave the book to his son, Methuselah. "Guard this," he said, "for though I will be taken, the book must remain. It is the bridge between earth and heaven." If one meant, and one day, as he walked alone among the hills, a light descended, a wind rose, and Enoch was taken. No grave holds his bones. No stone bears his name. The scriptures say simply, Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. If we was. But those who knew the Book of Raziel understood what it meant. He had become what Adam once was, a man who walked with God. Time, like a river, moved steadily forward. The memory of Enoch's ascent lingered in the hearts of his descendants. A story whispered beneath starlight and retold beside sacred fires. From Enoch, the Book of Raziel passed to his son Methuselah, who lived longer than any man before or after, for 969 years. Methuselah guarded the book. He read its words each day, not out of ritual, but with reverence, and he taught its wisdom to those who would listen. But as the generations multiplied, fewer remained faithful. The world was changing, and not for the better. The children of Cain had built cities of stone, filled with greed and pride. They worshipped idols fashioned by their own hands, gods of metal and wood that demanded nothing and offered false promises. Violence became common. The strong crushed the weak. The light of compassion dimmed. Even among the children of Seth, the line that had once honored God, hearts began to turn. Intermarriage with the children of Cain led many astray. The divine teachings were neglected. The name of the Lord was spoken less and less. The sacred became profane. But amidst the growing darkness, one man still walked with God, Noah. He was a quiet man, steadfast and unshaken, while others mocked the old stories and laughed at the ancient prayers. Noah remembered. He studied the Book of Raziel with the same devotion as Enoch and Methuselah before him. Each morning before the sun rose, he opened its pages. He did not rush. He sat with the words, letting them enter his heart like water, soaking into dry earth. He prayed the ancient prayers. He recited the names of angels. He memorized the 72 names of God, though he spoke them only in times of great need. And slowly, he began to sense what others ignored. Judgment was coming. One day, while Noah knelt beside the book in prayer, the voice of the Lord came to him not in thunder, but in clarity, a still, clear voice, unmistakable. "Noah," it said. He lifted his head. "Here I am." "Lord," it was Meta, "the end of all flesh has come before me. The earth is filled with violence. I will bring a flood upon the earth to destroy all that breathes. But you have found favor in my eyes. I will save you. Build an ark, a vessel of refuge. Bring your family inside, and 2 of every creature. You will preserve life. Zin, Noah's heart pounded. Lord, he whispered, I will do as you command. Well, doze, the voice continued. Open the book I gave to your fathers. What you need has already been written. Level. Noah opened the Book of Raziel with trembling hands, and there, as if it had always been waiting for him, were the plans, a diagram of an ark, measurements written in golden letters, instructions down to the last detail, 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, 30 cubits high, a window at the top, a door on the side, 3 levels, sealed with pitch. Not only the design, but the timing, the materials, even which trees to use and how to bind the beams. The knowledge had been written before the world began. But the book offered more than blueprints. It gave prayers for strength when the body grew weary. It gave names of angels who governed endurance, wisdom, and craftsmanship. When the work grows too heavy, the book read, Speak the name of Hadriel, the angel of strength. When you do not understand the task, call on Requel, the angel of divine wisdom. Noah followed each instruction. He did not improvise. He did not question. He obeyed. The work took years. Some say 120. During this time, Noah was mocked by his neighbors. Why build a boat on dry land? They laughed. What madness is this? But Noah did not argue. He did not justify. Each night, after the labor was done, he returned to the book and read. He prayed not only for endurance, but for mercy for those who mocked him, for the world that had forgotten its maker. And the book sustained him. When he felt weak, he read the names of healing. When he felt afraid, he read the names of peace. When he doubted, he read the promises written in the book's hidden language, a language not of earth, but of heaven. And he remembered God had not abandoned the world. The world had abandoned God. When at last the ark was finished, it stood like a mountain of wood, weathered by labor and sealed by obedience. It was not beautiful. It was not elegant, but it was holy. Inside, food was gathered. Rooms were prepared. The animals came 2 by 2, drawn by a call no man could hear. Lions and lambs, birds and serpents, creatures of every shape and kind entered the ark in silence. And at the heart of it all, hidden in a chamber of cedar and linen, rested the Book of Raziel. Noah wrapped it carefully in cloth and placed it in a vessel of wood and gold, protected from water, wind, and fire. For he understood that the ark did not only carry flesh, it carried memory. It carried the covenant. It carried the light of God's word through the storm to come. When all was ready, Noah and his family entered. The door closed behind them, not by human hand, but by the hand of the Lord. Then came the rain. At first, a soft patter, then a downpour, then a roar that shook the mountains. The fountains of the deep burst forth. The windows of heaven opened. The world was submerged. Cities vanished. Trees disappeared beneath waves. Voices cried out, but no refuge remained. The flood swallowed the land. And still, the ark floated untouched, unshaken. Inside, there was fear, but there was also light. The Book of Raziel began to glow, not brightly, but steadily, like a flame in a storm. Its light filled the ark. It touched every corner, where it shone. The animals were calm. The children did not cry. The darkness outside could not enter. The book did not command the storm to stop. It simply reminded those inside that they were not alone. For 40 days and 40 nights, the rain fell. The ark drifted across an endless sea, but the presence of God was with them in the silence, in the shadows, in the glow of the book. It was a reminder. Judgment had come, but mercy had not departed. When the rain ceased and the waters began to recede, Noah sent out a dove. It returned with an olive branch. Dry land had appeared. Hope returned. Noah stepped onto the earth once more. His first act was to build an altar and offer a sacrifice, not for deliverance alone, but for the mercy that had walked with them through the flood. Then he returned to the ark and retrieved the Book of Raziel. Lifting it to the sky, he prayed, "Lord, this book has passed from Adam to Enoch, from Methuselah to me. It has guided us. It has preserved us. It will go now to my sons, so they too may remember your mercy." The 22 those, and so it was. Many generations passed. The children of Noah spread across the earth, forming tribes, kingdoms, and nations. Languages multiplied. Cultures grew. Yet, through the centuries, the Book of Raziel was never lost. From Shem, Noah's son, it passed to those who remembered. Sometimes it was hidden in caves, sometimes carried in silence by exiles. Sometimes it sat untouched in the corners of temples, its presence known only to the righteous few. But always, the flame of its wisdom endured quietly, like the hidden root of a tree waiting for rain. Then came David, King of Israel, beloved of God, a warrior poet, chosen to unite the tribes and bring peace to a fractured land. David ruled with strength and song, but it was his son, Solomon, who would inherit both his crown and his calling to build a temple where the name of the Lord would dwell. And from the moment Solomon took the throne, he longed for wisdom, not the wisdom of men, but the deep, ancient wisdom that shaped the heavens. One night, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream. "Ask what you will," the voice said, "and I shall give it." Seconding, Solomon did not ask for wealth, nor power, nor long life. He bowed his head in the vision and said, "Give me wisdom, that I may govern your people with justice, and discern between good and evil." Meda, when Minda, the Lord was pleased, because you have asked for wisdom and not for your own gain. I will grant it, and more. Riches and honor will be yours, and no king shall equal you in all the earth. And it was so. Solomon's mind awakened. His understanding of nature deepened. He spoke of trees and beasts, of birds and fish. He wrote proverbs and songs that danced with insight. Rulers and sages traveled from far lands to hear his words. But still, within him, a hunger remained, an ancient hunger, one that even divine wisdom could not satisfy. He sought the mysteries that lay beneath the surface of all things, the language of angels, the structure of the heavens, the sacred names spoken before time began. One evening, while studying ancient scrolls passed down through the Levites, Solomon came across a cryptic reference, a passing line that chilled his blood. It spoke of a book not written by man, but delivered by an angel to the first of men. A book that contained the secrets of creation, the names of the 72 angels, and the power to shape reality through understanding, not domination. Solomon whispered its name, Raziel. That night, he could not sleep. The thought consumed him. Could the book still exist? Was it myth or memory? He began a search. Quietly, he sent word through his kingdom, through the priesthood, through the elders and scribes. Most knew nothing. Some laughed. Others offered riddles. But one ancient priest, bent with age and blind in one eye, whispered what Solomon had longed to hear. It was carried by the children of Seth, the old man said, passed down through the flood, carried by the line of Enoch, of Noah, of Shem, hidden from the unworthy, preserved by the righteous. It is not lost, only waiting. Oh, Solomon bowed. Then I must find it. Is trising viria to prisons. He prayed every day, asking the Lord not for power, but for the gift of vision, to see what others could not, to be worthy of the book. And in time, the answer came not from a priest, not from a prophet, but from heaven itself. One night, as Solomon knelt within the unfinished temple, the light changed. The room, once dim with flickering oil lamps, began to glow with a radiance, not of fire. A figure stepped forward, clothed in garments woven from light itself. His wings shimmered with gold and silver flame. His face was serene, but his eyes held the memory of creation. Solomon fell to his face. I am Raziel, the angel said, keeper of the secrets of God. You have sought not power, but wisdom. You have asked not for control, but for truth. And so, I bring to you what was once given to Adam. It is life opened. From within his robe, the angel drew forth the book. Its cover shone like sapphire. Its edges shimmered with fire. Letters rearranged themselves across the surface, dancing like living flame. This, said Raziel, is not a toy, not a tool for ruling others. It is a covenant. Guard it well. Use it only in righteousness. For knowledge is a gift, but also a test. In Foch, Solomon reached out, trembling. The moment his fingers touched the book, visions poured into his mind. He saw the seven heavens. He saw the names of angels in brilliant procession. He saw the breath of God separating light from darkness. He saw the faces of prophets not yet born. He gasped, overwhelmed. Raziel's voice, soft and strong, echoed through him. Walk humbly, Solomon, or what is given may become your undoing. Those cantery, and then the angel was gone. Solomon rose slowly, the book in his hands, his spirit shaken to the core. That night, he did not sleep. He read until the stars faded. The book revealed wonders, but it also required restraint. He began to incorporate its teachings into the construction of the temple. With its wisdom, he aligned the stones not only with the sun and moon, but with the order of heaven. He called upon the angels of craftsmanship and strength. The workmen moved with speed and precision. Stones fit perfectly. Beams bore impossible weight. Soon, the temple began to rise faster than any had imagined. But Solomon's use of the book was not only architectural, it was spiritual. He taught the priests the prayers of old. He aligned feasts and fasts with the celestial rhythms revealed in the book, and he spent hours each night studying the 72 names, meditating not for control, but for understanding. He began to see how each name was a window into God's nature, and how each angel bore not only power, but purpose. The temple became more than stone. It became a mirror of the heavens. And yet, the book still held secrets. In its final sections, written in symbols too intricate to decipher at first, lay hints of something more, a ring, a seal, a binding name that could command not only angels, but demons. Solomon hesitated. He read the warnings carefully. The power described was not forbidden, but neither was it given lightly. The seal, once crafted, could call forth even those spirits who served darkness, binding them by the name of God. But it came with a cost. Use it only, the book warned, to restore order, never for pride, never for domination. For what you command, You are also responsible for... Oh, Solomon closed the book. He would wait. He would pray. He would not act until his heart was sure. For he knew now, more than ever, that knowledge without humility leads not to wisdom but to ruin. Despite his wisdom, despite his caution, Solomon could not ignore the final teachings of the Book of Raziel. Each night, after the work on the temple had ceased and the palace grew quiet, he returned to the pages covered in strange symbols and fire-marked script. The words did not just describe a ring, they breathed it into his imagination. A seal engraved with the sacred name of God. A ring that could bind spirits not only of light, but of darkness. It would not just summon demons. It would command them, not to destroy but to serve, to labor, to be conquered by holiness. Solomon struggled. Could such power be wielded righteously? Could he, mortal though wise, command forces older than man and filled with fury? The book warned again and again, do not use this seal for glory. Do not wear it for vanity. It is a burden, not a crown. But the temple's construction slowed. Stones cracked. Workers grew sick. Accidents plagued the site. Some whispered of sabotage. Others spoke of curses. Solomon knew better. The book had foretold it. Evil forces resisted. The presence of God could not rise among the people without awakening those who hated the light. If the temple were to be built, the darkness must be silenced. So Solomon decided. He summoned the finest metal workers in Israel. He ordered a ring to be forged of brass and iron, two metals bound by opposing forces. Around the band, they inscribed the tetragrammaton, the four-letter name of God, too holy to be spoken. On its crown, he ordered the names of the four great archangels to be etched: Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. And beneath, in a hidden groove, a name taken from the book itself, a secret name that burned when read and glowed faintly, even in shadow. When the ring was complete, Solomon placed it on his finger. The moment he did, he felt it an invisible weight, like fire wrapped in silence. His breath caught. A force passed through him, not his own. Not power to use, but power to answer a call. He fell to his knees and whispered a prayer, "Let me be your vessel. Not my will, but yours." They beat of turned of the fru. He waited. The test came swiftly. A demon had entered the worksite silent. Unseen, it brought sickness, misfortune, dread. The workers feared. Solomon stood in the center of the site one twilight, raised his hand, and spoke. "By the name engraved upon this seal, I command you, reveal yourself." Lever. The air shifted. It was not smoke, not wind, but something colder, darker. A shape emerged, twisted, broken, yet human in form. Its eyes glowed red. Its mouth did not open, but a voice slithered into the air. "Who dares?" "I am Solomon," the king said, "servant of the Most High. I bear the seal of his name. You will not torment his people." "This cases," the demon hissed. "You are a man. You do not command me." "Yes, I do not," Solomon replied. "But he whose name I wear does." "Kneel." Basing, the demon shrieked. The ring glowed with a fierce light. The demon dropped to its knees, its form shaking. It reached for its face, as if blinded. "What do you want?" it cried. "You will work," Solomon said. "You will carry stone to shape wood and assist in the building of the temple of the Lord. You will serve righteousness, and when the temple is complete, you will return to the abyss." Manasseh, and it obeyed. The demon labored, not alone. Solomon, using the ring, called others one by one. Spirits, bound in pride, in hatred, in ancient rage. They came resisting, then bending, trembling before the seal. Under Solomon's command, they lifted stones no human could lift. They cut beams with precision no tool could achieve. They dug deep foundations, carved intricate designs, and worked without rest. And the temple rose, gleaming with gold, echoing with the sound of holy purpose. The people marveled. None saw the demons. They worked unseen, bound by the ring and the prayers. Solomon spoke daily from the Book of Raziel. Every day he invoked protection. Every night he prayed for discernment, for he knew to command such power and forget God was to become worse than the very spirits he bound. But Solomon was not content with labor alone. He began to question the demons, asking their names, their origins, their roles in the fall of creation. One by one, they answered. They spoke of pride, of jealousy, of the moment they turned away from the light. Solomon wrote down their confessions, creating scrolls of demonology. He learned how they tempted, how they whispered to kings, how they sowed chaos in the hearts of men. He learned their hierarchy, their patterns, their boundaries, and he used this knowledge not to boast, but to protect. He trained priests to recognize spiritual affliction. He created rituals for cleansing and blessing. He taught the people that the greatest defense against darkness was not power but righteousness. Still, something in Solomon shifted. The longer he wore the ring, the more familiar the power became. He began to rely on it. He began to enjoy it. When foreign dignitaries came, he did not always speak of the Lord. Sometimes he spoke of his command over spirits. Sometimes he showed the ring, and some began to whisper, "He commands angels and demons alike." The Book of Raziel warned him. One night, Solomon opened to a page he had never seen before. A passage had appeared clear, glowing with a strange urgency. When the servant forgets the master, even the holy becomes a snare. The one who binds demons must first bind his own heart. Say, too. He stared at the words for a long time. The temple was completed. It stood as a monument of devotion, radiant and resplendent. But Solomon had changed. He began to collect wives from foreign lands. Hundreds. Many brought their idols, their rituals, their gods. He tolerated them. Then he honored them. Then he worshipped beside them. He no longer prayed over the ring. He no longer read the book each day. The seal that once burned with purpose now sat quietly on his finger, heavy but forgotten. And in time, even the presence of God departed from the temple he had built. In his old age, Solomon saw clearly. He wrote, "Vanity of vanities. All is vanity." He knew now what he had lost. The ring had not failed him. The book had not deceived him. He had failed to listen. Before he died, he placed the Book of Raziel in a sealed chamber deep within the temple. The ring he cast into a place only he knew. He wrote a final prayer and left it on the last page. "Forgive me, O Lord, I was given light and used it to cast shadows. Let the next who finds this walk, not in pride but in awe." Madid, after Solomon's death, the Book of Raziel vanished from public sight. It was said to be sealed beneath the temple, hidden in a secret chamber, protected by traps and blessings alike. Some believed the ring was buried with him. Others whispered it had been carried away by angels, reclaimed before it could be further misused. What remained were fragments, copies of copies, quotes in sacred scrolls, echoes of the power that once moved through prophets and kings. But the knowledge itself did not die. It changed form. It became quiet. It hid itself in the folds of Jewish mysticism. From the ashes of Solomon's decline, Generations of scribes, scholars, and sages preserved what they could. In the heart of Israel, and later in the exile of Babylon, teachers began to extract pieces of the ancient book. They studied sacred verses with reverent caution, listening for the hidden layers beneath each line. One of the most mysterious discoveries was a formula encoded in 3 verses from the Book of Exodus. Each verse contained 72 Hebrew letters. When arranged in a precise, interlocking pattern forward, backward, forward, they revealed something astonishing. 72 triplets, each one a name of God. These were not names like Elohim or Adonai, known titles spoken in worship. These were names not meant to be spoken aloud at all. They were vibrational keys, channels of divine energy. To the initiated, they were doors into heaven. To the unprepared, they were flame. This was not magic. It was devotion carried to its highest expression, language becoming prayer, becoming presence. The names were preserved in hidden texts, passed down by sages who understood the weight of what they carried. They did not announce them. They did not teach them to crowds. They whispered them in twilight. They wrote them on parchment only to bury them again in silence. A student was never told the names until he had spent years in humility and purity. One sage taught, "You must become a vessel before you can hold even one." Menasty, among those who carried the knowledge of the 72 names, was Rabbi Akiva, a shepherd-turned-scholar who lived during the time of Roman occupation. Nearly a century after the destruction of the Second Temple, he had begun his life unlettered, mocked even by children, but his wife Rachel believed in him. Encouraged by her faith, Akiva began to study at the age of 40. He learned the Hebrew alphabet alongside school children. He endured humiliation. He memorized the Torah, then the Mishnah, and eventually the hidden teachings of the mystics. One night, in the library of an old synagogue, Akiva found a page, a fragment. It was brittle with age, the ink barely visible, but the structure was unmistakable. 72 triplets, faint but preserved. At the top was a heading, Shem HaMeforash, the explicit name. He did not speak them. He wept. He fasted for 7 days. On the 8th night, a plague struck his village. Children grew sick. Parents cried out to God. Akiva returned to the synagogue, opened the manuscript, and chose one name associated with healing, with restoration, with divine wholeness. He did not recite it. He breathed it, slowly, with trembling lips, and the air changed. The child lived. Akiva never claimed credit. He never spoke of the name, but he knew. He had touched the edge of the fire and survived. From that moment, he committed himself to the sacred task of guarding and teaching, but only to the few who would treat the names with reverence. "These are not tools," he said. "They are invitations." In later generations, the mystical tradition of Kabbalah grew around the names. In the hills of Safed, in medieval Spain, and later in the hidden schools of Eastern Europe, teachers taught that each name corresponded to an aspect of the divine. One name brought healing, another protection, another clarity of thought, another the calming of storms. Some opened the heart to compassion, others shielded the soul from temptation. Still, others restored broken families, healed generational wounds, and stirred the soul toward its original purpose. The names were compared to musical notes. Each one vibrated at a different frequency, and together they formed the song of creation. When God said, "Let there be light," one mystic wrote. He did not speak in sentences, but in names, eternally free. The names were not meant to be repeated mindlessly. They were to be meditated upon letter by letter, sound by sound. A person was to align their heart, their intention, their whole being with the essence of the name before even whispering it. To speak a name without purity was like calling lightning with wet hands. Some mystics taught that each person had a name among the 72 that corresponded to their soul's essence. By meditating on that name, one could come into alignment with their divine purpose. It was not astrology. It was not fate. It was invitation. But even among the righteous, caution remained. One student asked his teacher, "Why do you withhold the names? Should not all of Israel know them?" The teacher replied, "Would you give a sword to a child? Would you light a fire in a dry field? These names are not secrets. They are responsibilities. Until you can carry them with humility, you will only carry danger. It's me." And so the tradition continued. Hidden, whispered, guarded. Even today, the names survive. They have been printed in books, shared online, displayed on pendants and posters, but few understand what they truly are. They are not spells. They are not shortcuts to success. They are echoes of the divine language. The syllables of light spoken before time began. They are not meant to give man power over heaven, but to open the heart of man to heaven's power. And the Book of Raziel remains their first and final source. Not because it contained them, but because it revealed their purpose not to change the world, but to transform the soul. For when the soul is transformed, the world cannot help but follow. As the centuries passed, the sacred knowledge once held by prophets and kings was scattered like seeds on the wind, hidden from plain sight, yet not lost. From the ashes of Jerusalem to the mountains of Spain, from the deserts of Babylon to the hills of Safed, a quiet river of wisdom continued to flow. This river would come to be known as Kabbalah, a mystical tradition rooted in Jewish faith, yet reaching far beyond ritual and law. It was a path not only to understand the world, but to encounter the divine within it. Kabbalah did not begin as a system. It began as a hunger, a yearning to return to the intimacy once known in Eden, to walk again with God in the cool of the day. Its earliest students were not philosophers. They were seekers, men and women who gazed at the stars and asked not how, but why. Why does creation sing? Why does suffering remain? Why does God seem near, and yet hidden? To answer such questions, they returned to the texts, but not only to read, they sought the layers beneath the words. They believed the Torah was not simply a book, but a living soul, with 70 faces, each reflecting a different light. To the mystic, every verse, every letter, even every space carried meaning, and at the heart of this unfolding tapestry was the legacy of Raziel's book. The Kabbalists preserved and developed the teachings of the 72 names, integrating them into meditative practices, rituals of alignment, and symbolic diagrams of the universe. They believed that creation itself had been spoken into existence through divine utterance, and that by studying these utterances, one could ascend step by step toward the mind of God. But this ascent was not about escaping the world. It was about transforming it. One of the core teachings of Kabbalah is tikkun olam, the repair of the world. According to this belief, creation was shattered in the beginning, not by accident, but by divine design. The vessels that held God's light broke, scattering sparks across all of reality. These sparks now hide in the mundane, the broken, the overlooked, every act of kindness, every moment of compassion, every word of prayer is a way of gathering those sparks and restoring what was lost. And this, the mystics believed, was the true purpose of the names, not to control angels, but to awaken the divine within. When a name is spoken with reverence, it releases a spark. When meditated upon, it aligns the soul with the source. And when lived, when its essence is embodied, It brings healing, not only to the speaker, but to the world. The Kabbalists created intricate diagrams to explain this process. The most famous was the Tree of Life, a map of divine attributes known as the Sephirot, 10 emanations, each one a facet of God's nature: mercy, judgment, wisdom, understanding, beauty, endurance, humility, sovereignty, foundation, and crown. The tree was not a ladder to escape the earth. It was a mirror, showing how the divine flows into the world, and how the world can return to the divine. Within this structure, the Book of Raziel held a special place. It was seen as a bridge between heaven and earth, between knowledge and mystery, between word and silence. The teachings it contained were too dangerous for the masses. The Kabbalists warned, power without humility leads to corruption. Understanding without purity leads to pride. So they guarded the book, taught only the worthy, and required years of preparation before revealing even its first layer. To even approach the names, a student had to be over 40 years old, married, emotionally stable, deeply versed in Torah and Talmud, and above all, known for humility. The names were transmitted orally, never written in their complete form, and some were never spoken aloud, not even once in a lifetime. When asked why, the mystics answered with stories. One told of a man who learned a powerful name too early. He tried to use it to heal a dying child, but his heart was clouded with fear, not faith. The name failed, the child died, and the man, filled with guilt, never spoke again. Another told of a righteous scholar who, upon meditating on a certain name, was overwhelmed by divine fire. He lived, but never returned to his previous life. He wandered the hills, weeping not in sorrow, but in joy too deep for words. The message was clear: the names were alive. They were not tools, but beings, not formulas, but revelations. They responded not to lips, but to hearts. If a person approached with pride, the names remained silent. But if one came with sincerity, the names would open, not loudly, but like the first light of dawn. Some Kabbalists taught that the world itself was sustained by those who quietly practiced the names, that somewhere, hidden from sight, a few righteous souls held the balance of creation in their prayers. They were called the Lamed Vav Tzadikim, the 36 hidden righteous ones. Unknown, unnoticed, but absolutely essential. It was said that if even one of them ceased to pray, the world would crumble. The Kabbalists also believed that the names had echoes in nature, that each tree, each star, each stream hummed with the vibration of a name, that the birds sang them, that the wind carried them, that even our breath whispered one of them, Yah, the sound of inhale and exhale. Life itself was a prayer. They taught. We just forget how to listen. Yet even as their wisdom grew, the Kabbalists feared what would happen if the names were misunderstood. And so they wrapped their teachings in riddles. They wrote in parables. They spoke in circles. Their texts are filled with symbols, coded words, and deliberate contradictions, so that only those who seek with their soul, not just their mind, will understand. They did not do this to hide the truth, but to protect it. Today, the tradition of Kabbalah continues. Some treat it lightly, using the names as decorations or fashion, but others still seek it in silence, in Hebrew letters glowing in candlelight, in long nights of study, in whispered prayers beneath the stars. The Book of Raziel, though rarely named directly, is still felt in these circles. It is the hidden root of the Tree of Life, the source from which the names first flowed. Its message remains unchanged. God is near, heaven is not far, and the divine light, though scattered, waits to be gathered again by those with hands of mercy and hearts of awe. For many who studied the Book of Raziel, the descriptions of the seven heavens were more than cosmology. They were maps of the soul. The ancients had spoken of the heavens as physical realms, vast spiritual worlds layered above the earth. But as the mystical tradition deepened, and the Kabbalists looked inward rather than only upward, a new understanding began to emerge. The seven heavens were not only places to be reached after death, they were stages of spiritual growth, levels of consciousness, states of being. Each heaven, they taught, reflected a part of the divine and called the soul higher, not through flight, but through transformation. The first heaven, Shamayim, was the realm closest to earth. It was the starting point, the domain of clouds and winds, the angels who guided the rain and recorded prayers. To the mystic, Shamayim represented awakening, the moment the soul first stirs from slumber and senses that there is more to life than what can be touched or seen. It was the voice that calls in silence, the feeling that even in the mundane, something sacred is present. For the soul, Shamayim was the beginning of longing. The second heaven, Rakia, held the stars and constellations, the great firmament where light is ordered and time is measured. Here the watchers recorded every deed. Mystics saw Rakia as the stage of reflection. Once the soul awakens, it begins to ask deeper questions. What have I done? Who have I become? This heaven is not one of condemnation, but of honest seeing. The soul begins to examine its life with clarity and humility. It becomes aware that its actions ripple through the world like light through glass. Then came Shehakim, the third heaven, the realm of heavenly abundance, of fruit-bearing trees and the manna of heaven. Mystically, this stage marked nourishment. Once the soul sees clearly, it begins to hunger not for food or comfort, but for truth. The soul seeks wisdom, seeks communion. This is the time of study, of learning, of prayer that begins not as ritual, but as conversation. It is here that the soul first begins to feel peace. The sweetness of Shehakim is the sweetness of connection. The fourth heaven, Zebul, was the city of God, the celestial Jerusalem, where the eternal temple stands. This heaven was understood as devotion. The soul, now nourished and seeking more, begins to live with intention. Life becomes sacred. Work becomes offering. Words become prayer. In this stage, the soul no longer asks only for itself. It begins to carry others in its heart. It feels the presence of God not only in the heavens but in the streets, in strangers, in suffering, in Zebul. The soul becomes a servant. Then came Maun, the fifth heaven, where angels sing endlessly in praise. The mystics taught that this was the heaven of joy, not happiness, which fades, but joy, a lightness of being that cannot be touched by external circumstance. The soul here learns gratitude. It no longer strives or pleads. It sings, even in sorrow, even in waiting. It sings. This stage transforms prayer into praise. The soul begins to rise effortlessly, carried by love. Machon, the sixth heaven, was the storehouse of blessings. Here, mystics said, the soul encountered purpose. This was the stage where hidden strength was revealed, where one's deepest calling began to emerge. The soul learns that it is not only meant to ascend, but to bring blessing to others. It becomes a channel, a bridge. The prayers it once spoke for itself now open doors for the world. The soul becomes aligned with divine mercy and begins to act as its vessel. And finally, Araboth, the seventh heaven, the throne, the light no eye can endure. the voice that creates and sustains all. Mystics spoke of this heaven with trembling. Few reached it, fewer spoke of it. It was the stage of union. Here, the soul is no longer separate. It no longer seeks. Because it has found, it no longer prays. Because it has become prayer. In Araboth, there is no striving, no fear, no name, only presence. It was said that Enoch, when he reached Araboth, could not speak for 7 days, not because he was silenced by awe, but because there was no need for words. He simply rested in the divine, as light rests on water. For the mystic, Araboth was not a goal to be reached through effort, but a state to be received through surrender, not conquered, but entered. This journey through the 7 heavens was not a straight line. The soul moved forward and back, sometimes falling from Maon to Shamayim, sometimes rising suddenly from Rakia to Mashon in a single moment of grace. The path was not linear, it was spiraled, woven, alive. And each time the soul returned to a stage, it found something new. The same prayers, but deeper. The same truths, but brighter. The Book of Raziel described these heavens as places. The mystics taught that they were within us. Every time we forgive, we rise a little. Every time we act with compassion, we climb. Every time we silence our pride and choose love instead, we step closer to the throne. The names of God, they said, were not passwords to open gates, but mirrors. They showed the soul what it must become in order to enter. A name of peace would not open unless the soul let go of wrath. A name of wisdom would not respond unless the soul first embraced humility. In this way, the 72 names became a ladder, not one we climbed with hands, but with the heart. And so, the heavens were no longer distant, no longer far. One mystic wrote, "Heaven is not above, but within." The ladder Jacob saw in his dream does not reach from earth to sky, it reaches from fear to trust, from confusion to clarity, from exile to home. Mazza, Fries. Today, this understanding remains. In every quiet act of kindness, a heaven opens. In every prayer whispered in darkness, a star appears. In every soul that turns from pride to mercy, the throne grows closer. And the Book of Raziel, whether held in hand or remembered in heart, remains the guide. It does not demand we rise in power. It invites us to rise in love. For nearly 2,000 years, the Book of Raziel remained shrouded in silence, not because it was lost, but because it was feared. Feared not for what it destroyed, but for what it revealed. It was not a book of war, but of wisdom, not a book of domination, but of divine intimacy. Yet, it was treated like forbidden fire, hidden, locked away, whispered about in shadows. Why? The answer was not written in the stars, but in the hearts of men. From the earliest centuries, religious leaders recognized that the Book of Raziel carried something dangerous, not dangerous in its content, but in its implications. It taught that mankind could commune with the divine directly, that angels could be named, prayers could be shaped, and heaven could be reached not through hierarchy, but through humility and holiness. This posed a problem, not for God, but for those who claimed to speak on his behalf. In both Jewish and Christian traditions, authority rested in interpretation. Rabbis, priests, bishops, they were the ones entrusted to explain scripture, to guard tradition. But the Book of Raziel bypassed interpretation. It offered revelation. It did not say, "Ask your teacher." It said, "Ask the Lord. Will take him." To those in power, this was unsettling. The earliest Jewish sages wrestled with the book. Some considered it too mystical. too foreign, too easy to misunderstand. They warned that reading it could lead to madness, pride, or spiritual error, and they were not entirely wrong. Mystical knowledge without grounding can unravel the soul, but beneath their caution was another fear, that ordinary people, armed with extraordinary knowledge, might no longer look to them for answers. Rather than condemn the book outright, they wrapped it in layers of restriction. They declared that only men over the age of 40 could study it, only married men, only those fluent in Torah, Talmud, and Hebrew grammar. Even then, only under supervision. The book was never copied in full. Fragments were passed between scholars like sacred relics. Each generation added new commentaries, encryptions, warnings. Over time, the original voice of the text became nearly inaudible, buried under a mountain of interpretation. And still, it spread as Jewish communities scattered through the world into Spain, Persia, Egypt, and beyond. The teachings of the book traveled with them, sometimes as oral traditions, sometimes as pages sewn into cloaks, sometimes as dreams passed from father to son. Wherever the children of Abraham wandered, the Book of Raziel wandered with them. But the more it traveled, the more it attracted attention. In medieval Europe, Christian scholars stumbled upon references to it in Jewish mystical writings. They saw the diagrams, the angelic names, the strange seals, and they misunderstood. To them, it was not holy. It was heresy, magic, witchcraft. The church, fearing what it could not control, acted swiftly. The Book of Raziel, along with other mystical texts like the Book of Enoch and the Zohar, was banned, placed on the Index Librorum Prohibitorum, the list of forbidden books. Possessing it could lead to excommunication. Printing it could lead to death. Yet, the book refused to die. It slipped into the hands of Christian mystics, secret groups like the Rosicrucians, alchemists, and early Kabbalists who saw in its pages not darkness, but light. They translated it into Latin, hid it within other manuscripts, used its symbols in cathedrals and stained glass. They believed it held the architecture of creation, the geometry of heaven. But without proper context, they often misunderstood its purpose-seeking power, not presence, using divine names as incantations rather than invitations. Meanwhile, within Judaism itself, a struggle unfolded. As the Enlightenment dawned, many Jewish thinkers sought to distance their faith from mysticism. They embraced reason, science, and ethics, rejecting the supernatural elements of their tradition. To them, the Book of Raziel represented the past irrational, dangerous, embarrassing. It was pushed aside, dismissed as folklore, myth, or medieval superstition. But not all forgot. In quiet corners of Europe, small groups of mystics kept the teachings alive. Hasidic masters in Poland, Sephardic sage in Morocco, Yemenite elders who still taught by candlelight. They did not seek fame. They sought God. And they understood. The book was not about escaping the world, but about sanctifying it. Its names were not for conquest, but for compassion. Its diagrams were not maps to treasure, but maps to the soul. The greatest fear of the book's enemies was not that it would summon demons. It was that it would awaken men, awaken them to the truth that God is not distant, that heaven is not far, that prayer is not begging but participation, that angels walk among us, that creation sings with the names of God, and that each of us, yes, even the forgotten, even the broken, can learn to hear the song again. And so the book remained, sometimes buried, sometimes burned, sometimes forgotten, but always waiting. And in the modern age, it began to rise again. As printing became cheap and widespread, old manuscripts were rediscovered. Scholars began translating fragments. Mystics began sharing teachings. The internet exploded with curiosity. Suddenly, the names of God, once spoken only in whispers, were printed on posters, jewelry, and web pages. But with access came confusion. Many treated the names as magical words, talismans for wealth or love. They spoke them without preparation, wrote them without reverence, used them as keys to doors they did not understand. And the danger returned, not the danger of fire from heaven, but the danger of misunderstanding sacred things. The same fire that warms the cold can burn the careless. True seekers, however, still remain. They open the Book of Raziel not to gain power, but to remember, to reconnect, to return. They study its pages not to impress others, but to impress upon their own hearts the nearness of God. They do not run from its mysteries, nor do they flaunt them. They live them, quietly, faithfully, and the book responds, not with lightning, not with spectacle, but with light, subtle, soft, strong. And when it opens, the reader knows this is not a book of secrets. It is a book of presence, a book that says, you are not forgotten, you were never alone, and the gates of heaven are not locked. They are waiting. In our age of instant information and endless distractions, ancient texts often feel like relics, dusty echoes of a world that no longer exists. But the Book of Raziel defies this. It has outlived empires. It has whispered through ages of silence. And now, in the digital age, it resurfaces again, accessible to anyone with a curious heart and an internet connection. But the question is no longer whether we can read it. The question is, should we? And if so, how? To approach the Book of Raziel today is to step onto sacred ground, not because the book is cursed or dangerous, but because it is alive. It doesn't offer quick answers. It doesn't flatter. It invites, and only the soul prepared for the invitation will receive what the book offers. First, and most importantly, do not treat it as magic. Yes, the Book of Raziel contains names. Yes, it includes symbols and sequences, celestial arrangements, and angelic scripts. But it is not a grimoire. It is not a spellbook to summon spirits or bend reality to your will. To use it as such is to miss the point completely. The book's power lies not in manipulation, but in alignment. Not in commanding, but in communion. It does not make you more powerful. It reminds you how small you are and how loved. If you choose to read it, begin with reverence. Before you open a page, pause, silence the noise. Close the apps. Still your breath. Offer a simple prayer not for knowledge, but for wisdom. Say, let me read what is for me. Let me read what is for me. Let me forget what is not. And may I be changed, not by the words, but by the truth behind them. And then begin slowly. Do not rush. The Book of Raziel is not meant to be read like a novel. It is not a story with a plot. It is a doorway. Every page, every sentence, is a step deeper into the temple. And in temples, we do not run, we walk. Pick one name, one phrase, one diagram. Sit with it. Ask questions, not to the page, but to your own soul. Ask, why does this stir me? What does this awaken in me? What must I change in order to understand this fully? Keep a journal. Write down what you see, what you feel, what confuses you. The process is not linear. Some insights will come suddenly, like lightning. Others will take months. Some names may mean nothing now, but years from now. They may call you back with clarity. Do not study alone forever. The Book of Raziel was passed from father to son, teacher to student. If possible, find others who honor its message. Seek communities, mentors, spiritual guides, not to tell you what to believe, but to walk with you through the mystery. Wisdom grows in dialogue, and humility deepens when we are not the only voice in the room. Be cautious with teachers who promise too much. Any person who claims to unlock all the secrets of the book, who demands payment for initiations, or who boasts of controlling angels should be avoided. The true teachers are quiet, measured, grounded. They point you not to themselves, but to the one whose name the book honors. Next, examine your motives. Why are you drawn to this book? Is it curiosity, desire for power, hope for healing, longing for truth? Whatever the reason, be honest. The book does not punish wrong intentions, but it will reflect them back to you. If you come seeking control, you will encounter your own pride. If you come seeking escape, you may be faced with your fears. But if you come seeking presence, you will find it. And do not expect spectacle. The Book of Raziel is not theatrical. The changes it brings are often invisible to the world, but unmistakable to the soul. A softening of your anger, a clarity in confusion, a calm in the storm, a dream that lingers, a verse that repeats itself, a moment of awe when you least expect it. This is how heaven speaks quietly. The prayers in the book are ancient. You may not understand all their words. That's okay. Say them anyway. Let them wash over you. Let the rhythm carry you. These prayers are not spells. They are sacred breath. They train the soul to speak the language of the angels, not with grammar, but with sincerity. Speak the names only with preparation. If you choose to meditate on the 72 names of God, do not do so casually. Each name is a facet of divine will. Each name is a mirror. If you are not ready to see yourself clearly, wait. When you are ready, speak the name aloud, not loudly, not dramatically, just clearly. And wait, not for fire, not for voices. Just wait and listen. Sometimes the response is a memory, sometimes a conviction, sometimes silence, but something always shifts. Finally, remember the purpose. The Book of Raziel was not given to Adam to make him a king. It was given to help him remember, to guide him back toward the presence of God. It was not a reward. It was a compass, and that is still its purpose today. Not to help you summon angels, but to remind you that they are already near. Not to help you escape life, but to teach you how to live it with reverence. Not to lift you above others, but to bring you to your knees in awe. The greatest danger in reading this book is not madness, it is pride. And the greatest blessing is not power, it is peace. Peace in knowing that even after exile, even after failure, even after forgetting, you are still being called. The book is a reminder that Eden is not behind us. It is ahead, and the way is still open. The sun rises and sets. Kingdoms rise and crumble. Generations are born, live, and pass into the dust of memory. And yet, the Book of Raziel endures. Its pages, sometimes literal, sometimes metaphorical, have weathered time like the mountains. What began as a gift from angel to man became more than parchment and ink. It became a thread, a golden, sacred thread running through the vast tapestry of human history. A witness, a bridge, a reminder. When Adam first held it, his hands trembled not with fear, but with awe. He had fallen. Yes, he had disobeyed. But even in exile, he was not abandoned. That book, pulsing with divine light, was proof that God was not finished, that the story of humanity would not end at the gate of Eden. That mercy could shine even in the shadow of judgment. From Adam, the book passed to Seth, from Seth to Enoch, and from Enoch to Methuselah. Noah carried it through the flood, sealing it inside the ark, like the last ember of a fire carried through the rain. And after the waters receded, he passed it to his sons, saying, "Do not let this be lost, for it is more than knowledge. It is covenant." And so it was. The book traveled hand to hand, heart to heart, not always visibly, but always faithfully, through the priest-kings of Salem, through shepherds and prophets, through those known by name and others lost to history. It was carried by exiles, hidden by scribes, burned and rewritten, buried and dug up again. It never screamed. It never demanded. It simply waited, glowing in silence. At its heart, the Book of Raziel does not just teach about angels or prayers or divine names. It teaches this, that God is always reaching, that even in humanity's worst moments, heaven does not turn away. The book is a witness to divine patience. It shows that knowledge is not a weapon, but a responsibility. That holiness is not found in rituals alone, but in remembrance. That power is nothing if it does not serve love. Throughout history, those who truly read the book, whether its literal pages or the truths whispered from its spirit, were transformed. They were not perfect, but they were marked. The mystics who wandered the hills of Safed, the scholars who studied by candlelight in Prague, the poor families in Andalusia who whispered the 72 names during persecution, the Hasidic masters who danced, not for performance, but because their souls burned with light. They all carried the legacy. In their hands, the book became a tree. Its roots went deep into Torah, into silence, into suffering. Its branches stretched wide into music, into poetry, into acts of kindness. Its fruit was not fame or control, but intimacy, an intimacy with the divine that changed the way they walked through the world. And through them, the world itself was changed. The legacy of Raziel's book is not confined to the past. It continues even now. In modern cities and quiet homes, in digital archives and fragile manuscripts, it waits, sometimes found by scholars, sometimes by seekers, sometimes by those who didn't even know they were looking until they opened it. Some find in it wonder. They see the complexity of the universe and marvel that such beauty was written into its structure. Others find purpose. They realize their lives are not random, that they are part of a story stretching back to Eden and forward into eternity. Still others find comfort. They see that even the first humans were not abandoned, and so neither are they. But perhaps the most powerful part of the book's legacy is not what it contains. It is what it represents. It represents a God who speaks, a God who sees, a God who reaches down not because we are worthy, but because he is love. The Book of Raziel reminds us that heaven is not locked behind pearly gates. It is not guarded from the weak. It is near. It is open. And it calls. It teaches that the 72 names of God are not for decoration or power, but for connection. They are echoes of divine breath, keys not to control creation but to restore it, to participate in the repair of a shattered world. It teaches that the 7 heavens are not merely distant realms, but reflections of our journey. Every act of humility is an ascent. Every act of love brings us closer. Every honest prayer, every moment of selflessness, moves us through those layers of light. It teaches that angels are not far. They walk beside the brokenhearted. They carry our prayers when our words fail. They remind us, again and again, that we are not alone. The Book of Raziel is not about secrets. It is about remembrance. It is about the truth that was given before time began and will echo after time ends. You are seen. You are known. You are loved. This is the legacy of Raziel, not knowledge for the sake of knowledge, but knowledge that awakens compassion, knowledge that inspires devotion, knowledge that turns the soul not inward toward pride, but upward toward awe. Even now, as you read these words, something ancient stirs, not because the book is magical, but because you are remembering. Somewhere deep within, your soul remembers the gates of Eden, the fire, the silence, and the light that broke through it. It remembers the voice that whispered, "You are not forgotten." Tupa. That is the true legacy of the Book of Raziel. It does not promise control. It promises presence. And in that presence, everything changes. Part 18. A prayer for the end. The journey through the Book of Raziel is not like finishing a story. There is no final page, no neat conclusion, no sealed ending. To reach the end of the book is to arrive at a beginning, a return not to Eden, but to awareness, a circle, not a line. And so we close, not with explanation, but with invocation, with prayer, because prayer, above all, is what this book has taught us. Not just how to pray, but how to live as prayer. Tonight, we speak the words not as scholars, not as mystics, not as seekers of secrets, but as children. Children of Adam, children of Eve, carriers of sorrow, of questions, of hope. Let us begin. Heavenly Father, Creator of all that is seen and unseen, the one who spoke light into being and shaped the soul from breath and dust, we come before you, not with formulas, but with hearts wide open. We thank you for the gift of this ancient book, for the names it preserves, for the mysteries it guards, for the quiet fire that still burns within its words. We thank you for Adam, who held it with trembling hands, who wept outside Eden, and yet prayed. We thank you for Eve, whose silence was not absence, but strength, for her steady presence, her fierce faith, her unspoken courage. We thank you for Enoch, who walked with you, for Noah, who trusted you through the storm, for Solomon, who built and learned and repented, for the unnamed ones, those who preserved the book through exile and fear, who whispered its truths when no one listened. We ask that you would awaken our hearts to what this book truly means. Let us not be dazzled by secrets, but drawn by your presence. Let us not chase visions, but seek mercy. Let us not grasp for power, but for peace. Teach us to live in such a way that your name is written on our actions, not just on our lips. Let every act of kindness be a letter, every sacrifice a prayer, every moment of compassion a line from your eternal scripture. May we become walking pages of your love. Help us to remember that the heavens are not far, that angels are not absent, that we are not alone, that your hand still reaches, that your voice still speaks, that your light still breaks through every shadow. Tonight, as we rest, may the names of the 72 surround us, not as magic, but as presence. May the angels assigned to healing, protection, wisdom, and peace move among us quietly. May our breath align with yours, our thoughts return to truth, our memories be healed. Let us dream not of power, but of gardens restored, of rivers clear and singing, of a world mended by gentleness. Let us rise tomorrow with humility, not haste, with gratitude, not fear, with clarity, not noise. May we become like the ark carrying what is sacred through the flood. May we become like the temple built not by stone alone, but by intention. May we become like the book itself, unchanging in our devotion, burning in our faithfulness, open to your spirit. And if we forget, if we fall again, if we grow weary or wander, then let this prayer, like the book, remain, waiting, watching, whispering, reminding us that the way back is always open, that the voice that called to Adam still calls to us, that the light which guided Enoch still shines, that the covenant has not been broken, that the flame has not gone out, that the book has never truly closed. And so we pray, O Lord, Most High, El Elyon, Ancient of Days, whose name cannot be spoken fully, yet whose breath fills all the world, guide us, guard us, gather us, help us remember who we are, and whose we are. May we be as Raziel was a keeper of secrets, but more importantly, a messenger of hope. May we be as Adam was not perfect, but seeking. May we be as Eve was not loud, but steadfast. And may we never forget that even after the fall, you gave us a book, not of laws, but of love, not of curses, but of return, not of mystery alone, but of mercy. Tonight, we say thank you, not because we understand all things, but because we are beginning to remember the one who does. Amen. Sleep peacefully. Dear soul, the angels stand watch. The book is not far. The one who gave it is nearer than your next breath. And all is well. There is a quiet truth hidden in the heart of every great story. Not all books are written for the eyes. Some are written for the soul. The Book of Raziel was never meant to entertain. It was never created to impress. It exists for one purpose: to remind us that the gates of Eden were never the end, to remind us that exile is not abandonment, to remind us that knowledge is not power, but responsibility, and to remind us, perhaps most importantly, that we are not alone. This is the final legacy of the Book of Raziel, not just what it says, but what it awakens. It is a mirror, a teacher, a companion for the long road back to God. From the moment Adam first wept outside Eden, this book has walked beside us, not in every hand, but in every generation, not always on a shelf, but always somewhere glowing in silence, waiting to be opened again. Its journey has not been easy. It has passed through flood, through fire, through forgetfulness. It has been smuggled, censored, and feared. It has been praised, misunderstood, hidden, and hunted. And yet, it endures, because something greater than human will sustain it. A promise. The same promise that spoke through the angel Raziel. Though you have fallen, you are not forgotten. Enoch 3:9. That promise has echoed through centuries, through names written in fire, through 7 heavens, through the rise and fall of kings, through temple and exile, silence and song. It is the thread that connects the first prayer to the last breath. And now, in your hands, or in your memory, or perhaps even just in your curiosity, it stirs again. You may not read Hebrew. You may not study mysticism. You may not know how to pronounce the 72 names, and still, the legacy is yours. Because the message of the Book of Raziel was never limited to a few. It was given to Adam, but for all. It was entrusted to Seth, but for generations. It was studied by Enoch, but for the future. And it belongs to anyone willing to approach with reverence, with humility, and with hope. You do not need an angel to appear. You do not need a temple to stand. You do not need fire in the sky. The book is already open if your heart is. Each time you act with compassion, you fulfill its purpose. Each time you choose truth over pride, you live its wisdom. Each time you sit in silence and remember that you are not the center but are still beloved, you carry the light it was made to preserve. This book was never about unlocking heaven. It was about revealing that heaven is already near. It taught that angels are not only warriors or messengers, but companions, some fierce, some gentle, all woven into the fabric of creation, standing at your side when you feel most alone. It showed that God's name is not one but many, not static but alive, not to be owned but to be honored. It reminded us that even the holiest power can be corrupted when the heart forgets its source, and that even the deepest fall can be redeemed when the soul returns with tears and truth. Solomon forgot. Enoch remembered. Adam wept. And you today still have the choice. That is the final power of the Book of Raziel. Not its ancient pages, not the fire in its script, but its invitation. To choose, to believe again, to begin again. It is not a key to escape the world. It is a guide to transform it. Not a scroll to memorize, but a path to walk. And like the best of paths, it leads not away from life, but deeper into it. It leads back to Eden, not in geography, but in relationship, not in perfection, but in presence. And so if you've come this far, if the story has stirred something in you, let that be your prayer. Not a spell, not a chant, just this: I remember, I return, I receive, for the fire still burns, the covenant still holds, and the God who sent Raziel still watches over the world. He has not changed. But maybe, now, we have